What's up, Algebra 2 students? Happy post-homecoming. This is the next video in my series for the class. This will be a brief video on just the introduction to using your TI graphing calculator. Quick little note though, this is actually not a TI calculator, this is actually my phone. My gigantic Samsung Galaxy Note 3. See that little arrow there? That's for the Droid software. You can pull out menu options. This is the app that I put on Edmodo. It's called Wabbit Emu, where you can have a calculator of your choice, A3, A4, whatever, on your phone. Works with Droids, not with iPhones, unfortunately. However, you can also download the app onto a PC or Mac computer and use it there too, so you can leave your calculator in your locker and bring this home. That's up to you. But anyways, just want to tell you that. But everything works exactly the same. So here we go. The first thing I want to show you guys how to do is just how to graph with it. So let's say we want to graph the lines y equals 2/3 x minus 5. Let's also graph the line y equals, negative 5x plus 4. So I want to graph these two lines. I can do it by hand like you have done in the past, or this baby can do it for you. So here's what you're going to do. Well, first off, you need to get to this screen you see right here. You do that by pressing that y equals button right there. You press that screen, you'll get to this little menu. You see the y1, y2, y3. You can basically graph, I think it's 10 or so lines at a time, or functions at a time. In this case, we're only going to graph two, this one. So once you're in this menu, that little black box will be blinking. Type both these lines in. So I'm going to do that right now. So I do that, and it looks like this in step 2. Notice that for the 2/3 x, I used parentheses for 2/3. I didn't just type in 2/3x. Because if you just type in 2/3x, that's like having this, which the calculator reads as 2/3x. Not the same thing, so don't do that. Anyways, you type both these in. Also notice that for this minus sign, I used the minus sign on your calculator, which is above the plus sign in the bottom right. For the negative in front of the 5 in the second equation, I use the negative sign just to the left of the enter button. They're different things. If you mix them up, you'll have an error and not be able to graph. You type in your equations. Now you can actually see them graphed for you. Just press that button right there, that graph button, and see what happens. Once you press that graph button, you're going to see the calculator draw both lines for you right in front of you. And when you do, it should look something like this. So in step 3, I hit graph. It should look something like this. If it doesn't, then you might have a problem with what's called your window. So your window tells you the range with x's and y's of what is seen. It's like how far zoomed in or how far zoomed out the graph is. Are you graphing from 3 to 3? Or are you graphing from negative 300 to 300 for x and y? So what you can do is press that zoom button, and the 6th option is zoom standard. So if you press zoom and then 6, that means zoom standard. So zoom standard, I'm running out of space there, zoom standard, and that brings you back to this view. So right there, that's negative 10 for x, that's 10 for x, that's negative 10 for y, that's 10 for y. So it's not a perfect square graph where the x units are actually bigger than the y units because it's a rectangular screen. So, but still, it's close enough. You can see that if I go back up the page, that the negative 5/4 the negative 5x plus 4 line, that purple equation, is right here because it's the negative slope, and that 2/3 x minus 5 equation is right here. So they're both graphed for you, which is pretty nice. Other things you can do, so you can press the zoom button, you can zoom in, zoom out. It's just, you can kind of play with that. Your window, you can change manually, like you only want the x's to go from -8 to 12 and your y's to go from -15 to 15. You can go ahead right now and play with that if you want on yours to see how that works. Trace is kind of cool. If you press the trace button, you can arrow across the graphs. You can press up and down to change which graph you're on, if there's more than one, which there is here. Or you can press left and right and just move a point along either graph. When you do that, down at the bottom of your screen, it's going to say, oh, let's say you're at like this point, you're at this point right here on your trace. It's going to say, oh, at that point, x equals 4.25 and y is about -1.48. So you can find exact points on each line, which might be nice in doing some math in the future. A couple other nice things. You'll notice right here there's the table function. So what you do is you press second, that's the yellow button, and then graph. Gives you a table of values, which is pretty cool because then you can actually see a bunch, an XY table, an input-output table for each function. In this case, I have two functions graphed, so if I go to that table, I'll actually see, if x is 5, I'll see what y is for both the first and second graph. So I'll show you that right now. So I'm going to scroll down here and show you that table for the two functions we had. So you press that table button, and you'll see something like this. The x values might be different on yours. That's not a problem. You can arrow up and down and change the x values. So for reference, that y1 equation was the first one, 2/3 x minus 5. y2 was the -5x plus 4 equation. And if you forgot what those equations were, you can just press the y equals button again, and you'll see that same screen right here, which tells you your equations. And again, just press second, graph, and you'll have your table. So back to the table, you can see, okay, when x is 0, that first equation returns -5, and the second equation returns 4 for y. Well, I mean, if x is 0, then both these go to 0, so that should be kind of obvious. But what's cool is you can arrow up and down, see a bunch of values. If you press this option right there, so that would be second window table set, you can actually decide where your table starts and what the increments are. So if I want to look at decimal values, let's say I want to look at every quarter or every half instead of every whole number, I can change it right there. So it looks something like this. So I hit second window for that table set option. So table start is where you want your table to start. I pick 0 for that, and look at that. When I then hit second and graph my table, it started 0. Also, that triangle, I may have shown you that in class. That triangle refers to change. That's the Greek letter known as delta. Not something you gotta know, but just something that shows you in the calculator. So the change in the table, the increment changes 0.25 now. It probably was 1 before, which means now it counts up every 0.25, every quarter. So I can see in between whole numbers what the values are. So I want to graph decimals, I can now graph decimals. And you see then for 0.75 and 1.25 what each equation returns for y, right, when x is those values there. So that's kind of cool. Something you might want to use in the future. So that's kind of it now for the intro to graphing with this thing. Again, what's kind of nice is when you go to that y equals screen, you can type in any kind of equation you want. X squared, x cubed, absolute value of x, and it will just give you the graph. And you can also look at the table. My mic cut out again, sorry about that. But like I'm saying, you can hit that y equals button and graph anything you want see it on the graph, and then second table, and actually see exact values. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to show you a couple more things with the calculator that you might want to know. You may have already seen it in class, but I'll show it anyway. So let's say you type in some number and you get like a crazy long decimal. What you can do, so let's say I get like a 0.786, and I want to make that a fraction instead of a decimal. What I can do then is there's a math button, and then press the math fraction button. So I hit the math button, The math button's right about here, one key under the alpha key. And then you hit math, the first option is fraction, press enter. So I type in 0.786, and then hit math, and then the fraction option, press enter. It turns that into the lowest reduced fraction, which is pretty nice when you get decimal answers. So one thing that's cool you can do. One more thing too. You can make your calculator brighter or darker. If it looks too bright or too dark, you can change that. You see this little yellow circle there? That's kind of a sun option. So you hit second up will make your screen brighter. It'll make it like one element, like 1 unit brighter. So if you want to make it really, really bright, or it's really, really dark and you want to make it bright, hit second up, second up, second up, second up a bunch of times, and you'll see the screen get brighter. You can also hit second down over and over again, and you'll see your screen get darker. So just one thing I want to show you there. To turn your calculator off, you hit second on, which is somewhere down here. That'll turn it off. Other things I'll show you in class or later on. Just wanted to see that as the basics. So now you can graph lines and equations with this awesome device here. In Algebra 1, you couldn't do that. You had to do it all by hand. You'll still do some by hand in this class. But for a lot of linear equations, you can have this baby graph it for you. Also, a great way to check your answers. If you think you have an equation graphed right, you can check it on this too to make sure it's correct. That's all I got for now. This video is over. Bye, y'all.